Welcome to Coach SG and Friends, where we discuss topics that help you have a better relationship with yourself and others. I am Coach SG, otherwise known as your joyful friend. I'm a relationship coach and life mentor, an entrepreneur and speaker. I'm based out of Los Angeles, but originally from Brooklyn, New York. I love great music, deep conversations, and inspiring people to live their best emotional lives and create their most amazing love story. Let me introduce you to my two friends, Janessa Rose and Lisa Miranda. Janessa is the CEO of Motivational Monsters, a nonprofit that helps people activate mental health and emotional well-being through creative arts. She is the author of How to Stop Being an Effing Bum. BUM stands for Broken Urban Mentality. She's been dubbed the Tony Robbins / Cardi B of motivational speakers, and she calls herself the Galactic Goddess. Lisa Miranda is an actor and creative director. She's also dabbling in producing. She is based in Miami, New York, and Paris. She is a world traveler who speaks several languages, who loves life, good people, and good conversation. So we want to welcome you to our podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back, ladies. Welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about rewriting a relationship rule book. And so Lisa came up with this topic. I think it was a great topic. Me and Janessa loved it. So just want to know why you came up with this topic and why do you feel like we need to rewrite our relationship rule book?
I think it's very important to look at the relationships that we've had in order to create the relationships that we want, and to take the lessons that have come with the good and the bad and use all that to give us direction and what we want more of in the future. So I know for me, I think I've finally like assessed things in a real way without, taking accountability, being aware, feeling empowered in a way where now it's easier for me to say, okay, this is what I want more of. This is what is not going to work for me. Taking more of a leadership role in my own relationships, because it's really easy to kind of, once in a while sit on the passenger side and let someone else drive your relationships. But creating rules is about being empowered and about living the life that you want.
Love it. Love it. Miss Janessa, why do you think we need to rewrite our relationship rule book?
So like Lisa was mentioning, some people are probably writing their rules for the very first time. And I believe at this level of awareness, you're now growing your emotions, your understanding, your emotional intelligence is expanding. It's like you say, Sherelle, moving up the emotional scale. When you realize,
I get that from Abraham. I can't take that.
no, but you do say it, and I've heard it from you first. Well, I might have heard it from Abraham as well, but still, you've helped me to use the terminology and understand that it's the same thing of emotional intelligence. You're raising your awareness, and when you start to set rules, it's really setting boundaries. It's becoming mindful of what works for you, what doesn't, what feels good, what doesn't. It's all a part of that. It's really about prioritizing your emotional intelligence and how you process it, and that's what's important for me, and why I think it's something that people need to consider. If any of those people who are watching this have never said, you know what, I never really realized I don't have rules. I kind of just went into this relationship with the concept of goal to be with someone. That's what I believe. I believe it's a big part of you prioritizing your mindfulness and your you really saying my emotions and how I process things, how I approach things, how things are happening with me. This is important, and it's just really a matter of saying, nah, I'm aware, I'm present. There's things that are not acceptable. I am purposeful, I am intentional in my relationship. When we're setting rules, it's another level of emotional intelligence. It's a higher level. And for me, that's why it's important. And people say, there's a saying that people be like, well, they ain't come with a manual. Well, now we are. Read the
See,
book.
you know what's so funny is I thank you both for your point of view. I when I saw the topic, I was like, this is so cool because I think about it. It's important to reset your relationship, every year. And I'm not big on the word rule necessarily. I think I like rules of engagement, but I like more of a guidebook or playbook because I want there to be some flexibility in that. And when I think about a relationship rule book, I'm thinking about it's the rule book for you two, how you guys play together, not necessarily what I expect out of a relationship, but how do we want to do this relationship together? And it's a collaboration of thoughts. It's like, well, this is what's good to me, this is what's important to me, this is what, and then you guys come up with this rule book together. I don't, when I was thinking about it, I wasn't thinking about it would be something I would do alone, because obviously when I'm in a different relationship with different people, I draw different things from those relationships. We have different things that we're working on, so it's great that we do one with each other so that we're clear on like how we're going to engage with each other. So I love that. So how does one get started on writing a relationship rule book?
I noticed for me, first I've been more curious about my relationships, right? Different people in my life, different roles that they play. And I start thinking about what's working really well with my relationships. Do I feel supported? Do I feel connected? Do I feel safe and appreciated? These things are really important. And usually when there's some kind of disarray, there's some kind of discord, you feel it, you know it. And maybe there are things on the other person's end also that they've never addressed that might be bothering them or preventing your relationship from really flourishing. So I know for me, on the last podcast, I talked about a family member that I was supposed to connect with this week, and I forget what I was talking. I almost said complaining about. I forget what I was saying last week. But this past weekend, I was supposed to do two different dinners with two different family members, and none of it happened. And one of the dinners that was supposed to happen, there was like a big misunderstanding. Homegirl thought I was having a personal, intimate dinner with, as like me and my partner, her and her partner, but she could bring an entourage. She wanted to bring people I didn't know and their kids. Which,
Oh,
if it was like a barbecue or something like cool or party of some form, but it wasn't. So, and it was interesting because my partner had said like the next day he wouldn't have had the courage to say, like to kind of let her know, like, hey, that's not the plan. Either, we can reschedule if we can't stick to the original plan, but that's really the only thing that would work for tonight. But I said that, and I'm really glad that I did. And I talked about it with another family member today, and she also agreed she wouldn't have had the courage to say that, but I did, and I'm really glad that I did because now the next conversation, I let a few days go by. The next conversation now is just getting clear on communication, on expectations, on how we
hmm.
value each other's time. Because yeah, you can't, you know what I'm saying? Something,
So
and
how
then
do so
also.
so how are you getting started to write this rule book then?
So with her, I thought about what I want, right? What are my expectations? Because I know for me, and I've spoken about this before with other people who like to give, right? Who like to do stuff for other people. It brings you pleasure. You don't want to cut that off. You can't say, I'm not going to do stuff for people or invite them to stuff because they're not going to appreciate it or they're going to take advantage. That doesn't work. So instead, I realized first, okay, I'm going to continue to be a giving person. I like to do it. I get pleasure. So I have to make sure that the people in my life understand how I want to be treated. They understand how to communicate with me. We understand boundaries. We understand how to reach out and speak to each other, and make sure that we are understanding the other person's intentions, so that if I'm doing something intimate and we're supposed to be spending quality time, that it's not misconstrued as like, um, bring your block and your kids. So you probably shouldn't have those conversations when there's a lot of emotions. Like that night, I was thinking, because I heard Sherelle say something really interesting recently. She's like, how much responsibility in this do I owe? Or how responsible am I for what just happened? Right? I heard Sherelle saying something like that recently. So I asked myself, how responsible am I, because she thought she, you know, she didn't just get this out of, you know, thin air. She thought this was like an okay thing, like just roll up in here with all these people. So I have to, you know, understanding, okay, some responsibility falls on me, not understanding, you know, not understanding her or her lifestyle or whatever. So not necessarily like, you can't do this, you not, but taking that away, giving it time for everyone to cool off, and then to just kind of, you know, have a conversation based on how we want to move forward.
Well, one would first and foremost have to really be in touch with what's important to them, and how their connection is important. Like, in what areas do they want to honor the connection? Because you can't just create rules without understanding the dynamic in the connections. So I would suggest that the first thing when you're creating a rule book is to understand what's important for you, what's important for the other person, and how are you guys going to connect with one another. How can we recreate things that do not restrict and create you to be rigid? You know what I'm saying? In our connections, if we think, and we, you know, words trigger emotions. So if we think in the space of, well, I got to create rules, we might come off in the protective stance, defensive stance. This is because you've been crossing boundaries, you've been hurting me, or a person could interpret it in so many different ways. So I personally, in my personal experience in recreating rules, not necessarily with a book, but just the approach and the concept about how I'm going to connect with relationships that I value, I have to first and foremost consider how I'm approaching them, first and foremost, because I'm not in control of them. Of course, I would love for you to consider me in the same way, but that's a huge waste of energy if you're not willing to do that on your own. The best that I can do is be a living example by approaching you in a way where I'm considering our connection and how I value and the things I value. You know, so that's one of the main things I believe is important when starting a rewriting the rules. What do I value in my connections, and how am I approaching the other person? You know what I mean? And what do I need? Those are the three main things that I think a person should consider when creating rules. And the rules are not necessarily, you know, like, if you don't follow these rules, this and that. It's more of a, this is what works for me, this is what allows me to feel my best, and this is how I'm willing to show up in this connection. You know, because the concept is not about struggle and having to survive the connection. It's how do we thrive connected? How do we serve? How does this connection serve you? How do I show up to serve you? What rules do I need to follow and implicate for myself in order to show up for you if I honor this connection? And that, in hopes, will give a great example and shift the frequency that y'all on, that y'all connecting on anyway. And hopefully they also reciprocate that. If and when people do not, that is just a sign that it's not a connection that it works for you. You know what I mean? Sometimes we get caught up in the, well, they're not doing what I'm doing, and we'll get hung up on this, well, they need to do what I did. Waste of energy. We're not in control of them. If they're not in the space or the frequency of, I also value this connection, the actions or lack of will be your the game over part, since we're talking rule book, right? Then it'll be game over. And that's how you got to really rewrite your rules. You really got to worry about, how am I approaching this situation? And little by little, the other person, you know what I'm saying, should be able to adjust themselves and see by example.
Because when I read rewriting your relationship rule book, I never saw it as writing it just for myself. So I want to know, when you came up with this topic, were you talking about rewriting the relationship rule book for yourself, or were you talking about like as a couple?
I think both can work, because you need to know first, in general, what's okay for you, where you're at, and then you can also do this with other people.
See, I guess when it's lovely that we have all three different perspectives, because when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, I can't have a relationship rule book for myself. I can have guidelines of how I want to approach relationships, but if I'm trying to write a rule book for a relationship with someone, I have to have their input, right? So I guess I was thinking about it as, and I guess it's a little bit different. It's more about like, getting clear about what you expect and what you don't expect. So I want to hear more about this. So how do you write a relationship rule book when, are you just talking about the relationship with yourself?
No, how you see your relationships moving forward, what you want more of in your life, what's working out for you. Like sometimes I think people have a lot of folks in their life who've been in their life for a long time, and we haven't necessarily took the time to see, well, how do these people fit into where I am right now and my future? Do we still connect? Are we just friends because we've lived in the same neighborhood? What kind of people do I want in my life? Are there people who I aspire to be in a room with, or to have some kind of adventure with, or friendship, or whatever? What's keeping me from relationships with those people and other folks that have those same kind of traits that I admire? So what has my evolution look like for me to become who I am now? So we could really take stock.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what I'm getting from that, though, honestly, it is for us. The rule book is not for no one else, because it can't be. People are not really going to sign up to our expectations. It's more about, how am I processing the people in my life? How am I approaching them? You know what I'm saying? It's really more about, what are my rules with my relationships? How do I approach these connections? All right, I've had this connection since I was 16, right? I'm 39 now. Love this connection. Hate where it's been. It's been many places. There's been many disregardings of rules. My personal rules, their personal rules. We created fake rules, all types of crazy shit happening. And we had to reapproach it. Do I value this connection? I value this connection. Do I want to lose this connection? I absolutely do not want to lose this connection. Clearly, the other person doesn't want to lose the connection either. We recreate it all the time, but we never discuss these rules. So really, it's about self, in the way I'm perceiving it, of course. I have really had to re-examine the connection and say, what are you approaching this like? How are you showing up in this relationship? What boundaries are you setting? Are they receiving it? Can you see in their actions? It's really a self-talk. Still to this day, there's never been an actual rule conversation or agreement or anything. It's just been actions. My actions changing, their actions reciprocating and respecting the change. So it's kind of like, you know what I mean? I had to approach me first. And the same goes for all the relationships. Everything had to start with me. All my rules started with me first and foremost. You're going to change this. You're not allowing this no more. You want this for yourself. This is what that looks like. When this happens, nip it in the bud, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel. How they process it is not your business. These are all the rules that started to change, and it changed all the dynamics, including best friends, family, lovers, business, everything.
I was going to say, what happens is we repeat the cycle of what we've lived through, or in our family have lived through, or people in our community, unless we take some kind of awareness to change how we live and who we are, right? So instead of repeating these same things that we didn't like ever, it's making a conscious choice to evaluate them and release the things that just don't work.
So in order for you to have a really great relationship, you've got to know where your personal boundaries are. You got to know where your personal needs and desires are. I guess I'm still having I'm still feeling like that could be like chapter 1 of this rule book. Like, get to know yourself first, understand your vibration, understand your truth, who you are, because you can't really play with someone when you're acting like someone else. Like, and you really know, like, this doesn't feel good, that feels good, but you can't have a relationship with someone by yourself. So they have to have some collaboration and some input. So I guess when I was thinking about this rule book, I was thinking about whatever relationship that you're experiencing right now, whether it's a family one, it's a romantic one, it's a work one. Everybody has to sit down and say, what are the rules of our engagement? Like, what are we drawing from each other? What do you need from me, and what do I need from from you, in order to feel safe, in order to feel heard? Because we fight to feel right, and those are the things that break down relationships. It's not so much how we're behaving. It's about, like, how your behavior is affecting me, right? So you could behave however you want, but when we're sharing a space together, how your behavior is affecting me, we have to have some rules around that. So I guess I was thinking about that. So when I was thinking about rewriting a rule book, I was thinking, you got to sit down with someone else and say, okay, I really want to play with you in a great way. But I got to know like what your rules are, what my rules are, and how can we play really nicely together and how we can get through obstacles. You know, I love the word rules for engagement, but not for our book, because sometimes we can get so caught up in the rules and not, and I think we just need to have guidelines, because we've got to be able to be flexible when, you know, whatever the rules are not working anymore.
Often the rules are coming up during circumstance. You know what I'm saying? Like when it's one thing, people aren't as, there's more people on the self-righteous journey than they are on the let's be healthy and non-toxic, these things. You know what I mean? So often when you sit and you even tell somebody like, we need to have a talk. Can we talk about these things? This is all burdening energy. This is energy of, oh, now I'm obligated to show up in areas I'm not even sure I know how to show up for myself. And so some people sometimes feel those are not my things to really, you know, gravitate towards. Like, I can't really consider your rules or those things. They just bring up things. They bring up negative, fearful emotions and people who are not on the path of consciousness, mindfulness, because all of this stuff that we're talking about is a person who is prioritizing emotional and mental well-being. These are people who are prioritizing and saying, this is important. I am mindful. I'm cognizant of what is happening in our connections. This is a rarity. That's the truth. While somebody's crossing a boundary or something or a rule, they're not even understanding. Like, you know what I mean? And then the rules come up like, hey, listen, you know, I kind of like, you know, I love this connection, I value our relationship, whatever it is, however it is. But these things don't, you know what I mean? That's how the rules start to become. And then it's like, if the person is present, they say, wow, that was not my intent. I'm mindful now to that. Thank you for awakening me to this. And that is how little by little you start to set the boundaries. But when it's like, these are my rules, it's rigid, it's, you know what I mean? Like you gotta move within this thing. It becomes that, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm obligated to be, and that's what people really, I think, have an issue with sometimes when it comes down to setting these types of rules or whatever. It's more about like a growth process, continuing and being mindful about the connection, in my opinion, in my experience.
The reason why I thought it was like it starts with the, you know, it's something that you do by yourself, an individual sport is I have an example because a few nights ago this girl I knew hit me up and she was in town and she wanted to like get a drink or whatever, and we had been friendly for many years, and but we were never really friends, right? And I couldn't really put my hand on it. But now that I've been doing all this work, when I sat with her, you know, it was like I was a little bit in a minefield, and she kept going to conversations that I just don't participate in, right? But she really wanted me to like get into like juicy gossipy stuff. Like she went through every person that we both knew in common, and she had something to say about them, see if I would bite. And I'm like, nope. And then it's just like swerve, swerve, swerve. And I'm just like dodging these things. And then after the conversation, but it wasn't like in a judgmental way, like you shouldn't be in people's lives. It was just kind of like, you know what? Well, I like this thing about her. Anyway, so, you know, moving the conversation in a way where I didn't feel like I got stuck saying anything or talking about anything that was just low vibration. But I could also enjoy our interaction together and make a decision on if I would see her again and how, you know, and what would happen next time and how I would drive a little more. Like she was even asking me questions that like finance questions, like a lot of stuff that years ago I would have been like, wow, that was just like really inappropriate. And the other day I just like, you know, I just answered what I wanted to, and everything else I was like,
good job.
It is what it is. Yeah. And I could see where I still, you know, have work to do, but I mean like, it was just like I could see how this work has changed how I interact with people.
I would also mention that I agree with the knowing yourself. I think knowing what your boundaries are, who you want to be in every collaboration, right? Every relationship, it's really important. I guess what I was saying is that in order for your relationship to have more connection, you know, she's got to know that I don't want to participate in that.
But you say that to them, and then they're like, well, I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to, you know, like I even said, I really just want to talk about the good things in people's lives. And she said to me, well, I don't want to be the kind of friend who's not there for people when bad things are going on. So I was like, that's tricky.
I guess what I was saying was that there are going to be some situations where people are just who they are, and we don't have to change them. We only have to work with ourselves. But still, if she doesn't know that that's what's happening, like when they are talking about like maybe politics or stuff, I just say, I really don't watch that kind of stuff. So, you know, if you want to talk about, you know, some other experiences, we can, but I really just I don't have any value to add to that. So it doesn't make them feel like they're wrong and they're bad. It just lets them know that I'm not going to talk about that. But it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. I'm just focusing on something different. Does that make sense?
Writing that line down. I don't have any value to add to that. No, it wasn't like a judgmental thing. I just didn't want to participate in what she was going to judge. I was just like no comment. She's like, this person and that. And I'm just like, yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess when I'm thinking about rules of engagement of a relationship, I'm thinking about a relationship like real close ones, like, you know, our romantic partners, our close family members. But there are going to be people that we talk to that are not going to know how we want to approach things. And it's important that's why we have boundaries. So we can say, like, this makes me feel comfortable and this makes me feel uncomfortable. Not you did this thing to me and you shouldn't have done this thing to me. And then this is why. And then but it's really about like, you know what, this doesn't make me feel good. And I know your intention probably isn't that. And you're probably not thinking about me while you're having this discussion, but I want to bring it forward. So to me, that doesn't seem like a rule book necessarily to me, but I guess that's your own personal boundaries. And I think that's important for people to know. Absolutely, boundaries should be in a relationship. We should know, you know, what it is that makes people feel comfortable. And the rule book to me is like how you engage with each other. So yeah. And I want to ask you guys this question because, you know, obviously we just have a different view of how we're looking at everything. I think we're all right? Whatever works for you, whatever, if you have to write one for yourself, you have to write one for your relationship, you know, but I would just want to have better connections. And I realize that not everybody knows what my boundaries are because they treat themselves a certain way. So they're going to treat me how they treat themselves. And I don't have to take it personally, but what I have to do is create boundaries. And here's what I learned even about myself. I hate to have to make boundaries with people. Mm-hmm. It's not what they're doing to me. I hate to have to say, you know what, this hurts my feelings. Like, don't you know this is, how do you not know? You know, and I go down that rabbit hole and I didn't need to.
Hold on, because you said you didn't go down a rabbit hole. What would the rabbit hole be? Getting angry at her for asking?
Yeah, wanting her to understand my point. Wanting her to see, like, how could she even ask me for this?
Yeah, right. I think I'm still, my evolution hasn't gone past that yet. I'm still on that. Are you serious? Everything I do?
Right, because then that makes me powerless. That makes me a victim. That makes me feel sorry for myself. That makes me judgmental of her. And that changes my vibration. It doesn't get me to the solution. But what I realize is that it wasn't that she asked me. I hated to have to tell her no and explain to her why this wasn't okay. And it's just, you know, and I kind of see it as the same way with Janessa, like, dude, how do you not know this is not okay? Right. You don't want to have that conversation.
But here's the thing I don't understand, because everybody has some people that they know, oh, I'm not going to go there with that person. I'm not going to say that to that person. I don't know if respect is the right word, but everybody I know who's, unless they're completely crazy, you know, maybe they'll say something to me that they wouldn't say to you. So when do you get, or how do you get to that vibrational point, or what do you have to do in your life so you get less of people saying crazy things to you? Because like for me, it feels like even if I'm doing a lot of work where I can get over it, you know, faster, I would like for these things to be a thing of the past, because the things that they're saying feels like middle school. But I'm not in middle school and I don't live like I'm in middle school. So why, do you know what I'm saying? Like how do you get that kind of respect from people so they know not to come talk to you crazy, but you can still be in their life? So it's not like, all right, then we don't talk so that you can respect me.
That's what you do. You have to let them know. You have to say it in a way like when they're expecting a response from you. Like these people are expecting you to act the way that they see justifiable. Like, oh, so you can't help me with this?
No,
Oh,
because they don't do that to just anybody. There's certain things people say to certain people, but you don't want to not be who you are just because people are assholes. Do you know what
I
I'm saying?
think I had to focus on how it made me feel and not if they were disrespecting me or not.
exactly, exactly. Because
Because if I'm focused on the disrespect, I'm reacting to the disrespect. But if I'm focused on the, hey, this doesn't feel good, what do I need to feel better?
But how do you let people know your boundaries before? Because there's, like I said, there's some things some people don't try with people. But
Right.
so how do I become one of those people that people try shit
Well,
less?
that's the thing. You can't train anyone. You can only wait for the experiences to happen and know that you have power no matter what happens. Because what happens is we want to manipulate and control everything so people don't disrespect us, so people don't say things to us, so we don't have to put boundaries in place. But this is teaching us how to have boundaries. So I realized by taking a moment and not taking on what everybody else felt around me, she's just trying to use you. How could she think that way? If I had gone down that rabbit hole, I wouldn't have thought like, okay, how is this making me feel? And how should I approach this situation? So when I saw the text, I immediately had a surge of like, how the fuck, like, but then I said, like, no, Sherelle, you have power. You have power. You're good. Like everything is working out for you. What's getting you riled up is that you don't have to say it. Like, how can you think like this? You don't want to have to say that.
So
So
you're
what I
saying
did is,
the crazy stuff will always be there. You just have to get quicker and sharper with not reacting and just saying this is how I live.
right, this is how this makes me feel. I didn't need to tell her that. So in that instance, it wasn't about this is how it makes me feel. I just needed to tell her no. So what I realized, I was like, okay, this is a problem with me having to make boundaries. I hate making people feel bad. I hate having to say no to people about stuff. And I knew I had it. That was the other part. I knew I had it. So how do I say no when I know that I have it? And I was thinking, you know what? If she said to me, you know what, I really just don't have the money. Can you help
Right.
me
That's
out?
a different
I would have,
conversation. Right.
right.
That's
I
a
would
totally
have said
different
yes.
conversation.
Right. I would have said yes. But
My cousin, if she had said, "Hey, this girl has nowhere to go tonight. We had some kind of," oh, of course, but not bringing her over on this group of people. No, that doesn't work.
right. So what I did was I said, like, it's not about her. I can paint my picture of what I think what it is. I can say she's trying to use me. She knows I have money. So I can go down that, but none of that makes me feel good either, because I know my experience with her hasn't been that. So I realized it's just hard for me to tell her no. So I told her in the most creative way that I could, with standing in my power without feeling like a victim, without having any bad energy. And I just said, hey,
She's
get
not
no
gonna come
problem.
at you again asking stupid shit.
She
right,
may, but so now I have to believe in me. I don't have to control her,
right.
because
That's
we think the boundaries are controlling people to not treat
No,
us a
yeah,
certain
I
way.
never thought it was to control. But I just meant that there's certain people who act okay. So when you're nice, when you're generally nice, a lot of people come at you crazy.
Maybe.
Right. Maybe that's a belief I have to change.
no, they
But I've
do.
seen it my
They
entire
do.
life. You're right.
They
They
do.
come at you crazy because they think you're not gonna make them feel bad. You're probably gonna give in, or at the very least, like they have a shot of taking advantage in one way or another. I was just trying to figure out, is there a way to fortify myself to
Yes.
have less of those?
I gotta
So
say,
first, I would
yeah.
say, and then I'll let Janessa go. First, I would say you have to have a different belief system. I do think I'm a kind person. I think I'm generous. I don't believe that people take advantage of me, and I won't go down that belief system, because that doesn't make me feel good. That doesn't get me in my power. That makes me feel powerless, and I got to watch out for everybody. But now I got to know how to assert my power when that happens. So if I'm in a position where I've always got to assert my power, then I've got to know that, okay, something is going wrong in this relationship. Maybe it's not the best one for me.
Yeah.
We're still in resistance, and you got to get rid of the resistance.
Right. I think my issue is I kind of live in this other world a little bit where things are like really pretty and people are nice, and then every once in a while someone hits a rock on my head and says something crazy, and then I'm like, is this really reality? And I'm like, no, that was one little thing. Then I go back up there and ha ha ha, and then I'm just like, is this serious? And then I get a little knot right here.
Right.
I'm gonna let Janessa answer, then I'll answer.
The body starts to store the tension. So years ago, Janessa was I understood, I was in that space of fear. I was in I better assert these boundaries, just wide range before I think that I'm soft. So I had this personality where I would read energy. I would come with energy like, you better think twice before anybody, friend, family, business, whatever, lover. I have an energy of, I'll take your head off if you violate me. And at that moment, I did not realize that that was me being in fear and me having to be rigid and limited and lack. And it was a low vibration. It was coming from the place of, I'm scared of people to take advantage of me. And so I'm going to assert fear into everyone instead of respect. And as I got older, I started to realize that was unhealthy. It did not serve me, like Sherelle said. It did not make me feel good. Those are the things that I realized. People were respecting me, but they were avoiding me. It was more that they were not really respecting me. It was more like, I'm fearful. So I wasn't really considering our relationships or respecting the relationships. I was pretty much just fearing them, like making them feel like, if you cross these boundaries, the consequences are going to be something you don't like. You know what I'm saying? They were not showing up in the relationship connections fully. They were just fearful of being themselves, and I was not leaving any room to respect what they needed also. Right? That's what I was doing. So as I grew up, I started to realize that's an unhealthy approach to anything that I wanted to do. And so now it's all about, like Sherelle said, when the emotions come up, when the things come up, when the circumstances are giving you the opportunity to set the boundary, I had to start to say, I don't really care how they process this. And I'm not saying it in the space of, I don't like, who cares about, you know what I mean? I'm just letting them know this is what it is. This is how I move. And this is what I need in order to show up fully and continue to respect you and show up in a conscious space of respecting what you need as well. It's not up to me whether you follow it or not. It's up to me about how I am showing up for me. Really, that's what it's just all about with these boundaries of people. And I love that now. Like I need to have these boundaries set, and I'm pretty good with it now. And it doesn't feel great, but people are often trying to test you. You know what I'm saying? People are trying to test you. Some people want to see the way you respond. Sometimes people are seeing, how far can I throw this line? How much can I get when I reel back in? What can I get this magnet to attach to? So you have to assert, your rules. Like, this is a no. This is a no fishing zone.
I agree, but I have a different perspective, right? So, and I think I agree with what she was saying in the beginning about her boundaries. Like, she was, she wanted people to fear her. So, she was wearing boundaries as an armor, right? So what I'm saying is, wear boundaries as a tool. You don't want to do it as an armor. It's a tool that you're going to go get when someone is disrupting you, but you don't have to walk around with this suit of armor. Like, don't you do nothing to me, because when you do stuff to me, I fall apart. So that's what I'm saying. It's really about standing in your power in a situation. Okay, so what if somebody says something that disrespects you? You're not going to fall apart. That's what I learned. I'm not going to fall apart just because you said something that is going to affect your own vibration. We think it's going to affect us. It only affects us when we react to it. But when we don't give it all that energy, we're not creating anything negative with them. So does that make a little bit more?
I think for me, my situation was just, I didn't have boundaries, and I was okay with however things went, because that's how I saw everyone else living, whatever, like, it is what it is, it was luck. Some people are just unlucky, and this is how your life is going to be. And I'll even think about things from last year that were acceptable that today would absolutely not fly, and then I'll get upset. How did I yo, go ahead and imagine that happening today. And maybe that's just reflexes and new boundaries, because I'm not actually having any arguments or confrontations or anything. And even my conversation with my family member the other day, well, it was really, she was just like, hey, I'm really sorry, after, and I texted her, so it's okay, we'll talk soon. And I'm not going to be angry or anything, but it's just, interesting to me. And I refuse to like just like I don't even do that because I don't like how that feels. But
Right.
I do notice I'm getting real pissed off at the things that I've accepted even within the last year, which today it's like a perfect way if I want to get myself riled up. So I guess finding, I guess, accepting, there's the acceptance, people are going to be who they are. Understanding how far, understanding how to build a relationship with people despite them having elements that can and will trigger you at some point. Understanding how, how that all fits, and then still being able to have happy, healthy relationships.
Well, see, okay, so this is why I still believe, right, that why you have to write this with another person. So I thought we were going to talk about here's all the things to write your story, but I love that we did this organically because everybody got to add their perspectives to it. But what I would say is if you're going to rewrite your relationship rule book, like the other two ladies said, you want to start with yourself first. You want to be clear about your boundaries. You want to be clear about what you desire as a person. So, because if you're not clear about your boundaries, you can't expect other people to be clear about them. You're supposed to teach them about your boundaries. And then rewriting a rule book, I wouldn't call it a rule book as much as I would call it a guidebook. These are the tools that you're going to use that when you get into obstacles in your relationship, because those are the hard parts. It's not the part when you're having a lot of fun and everything is going well. It's when you're getting into friction. How do you get out of the friction? And I think the rule book or the guidebook should really be about like, let's make sure we're in a high vibration when we engage with each other. If we're feeling like we're going down a rabbit hole, let's go to our separate corners for a while until we can come back with love and kindness. Make sure we're respecting each other, and respect looks different, for each other. So I just think it's about however you decide to write this book, but you got to do it with other people. You got to be doing it with the relationship that you value the most so that you get their input, because it can't just be all about you. It's got to be about what you're drawing from each other.
I agree. I definitely agree. I see the rule book and just setting rules as boundaries, knowing that it's okay to express what you need to other people and not personalizing. Like Sherelle said, like I made it my business not to personalize the way other people received it. It's all about saying, hey, this is what I need. This is how I show up. And, that's it. There's no, it's no opinions about it. It's just what it is.
And I like the idea of really becoming clear and celebrating the evolution of yourself and your relationships and what you want and what you desire and how you're actually manifesting it. I think that's very important. To even the part where I said about looking back and seeing how you've transformed your decision-making process or your reactions. It's very powerful.
Love that. I love that, ladies. Another great episode. Well, again, we hope that you found some value out of it, and you leave us a comment. Let us know how we could have done it differently, or maybe something we missed, or something you want to add. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Take care.
My joyful friends, that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and leave a review. Share this episode with someone you think would get some value out of it. We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Bye-bye now.